Well, hello everybody. How you guys doing out there? So hopefully I got a little different setup here with my mic and everything that I'm doing. I'm doing just the final touches to the show. Woo, I made it 6 o'clock. I tell you, it was by the hair of my chin that I was trying to get everything set up. So hopefully you all can hear me pretty good. I have my mic in a different situation and I'm trying to make sure that I'm in a good spot to where you can hear me and everything kind of goes good for the show. So hopefully bear with me as I'm trying to get myself situated to this new positioning of my microphone and my camera and all that stuff. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Amp Life Talk Radio. I appreciate you guys tuning in and basically coming to listen to me talk about some of the topics that are hopefully relevant and important to you as amputees out there. So here's the situation, folks. My peeps. Ooh, it looks like you're on my Mac camera, which is a little different. So wow, that's pretty cool. So hopefully everything's good. I don't see my normal camera on, but I have two cameras. So looks like you're on the Mac camera. A little different look there. I'm kind of looking at myself over here to the side. I don't know. Does it make me prettier? Well, either way, we have a really good, interesting show. As most of you can see from the title that I put into this post here for the video. And man, it's kind of hot in my room. So if you see me sweating a little bit, it's because I'm drinking coffee. So I keep my water close by. We got a hot topic to talk about. That's probably why I'm sweating too. Well, we're not going to get too explicit. As you can see, the title of tonight's show, Season 2, Episode 23, is going to be about sex and intimacy after amputation. So I want some of you to put the kids away and get yourself ready for a good show that hopefully will be relevant to you. And hopefully you're going to learn something from this. I know I did. So I'll just put that out there. Let me get ready to go live because I'm a little bit behind on my broadcast live, but I always like coming on Facebook a little bit earlier just to prep you guys. Hey guys, please share the link, spread this show. For those of you that are in the amputee support group that I'm in, please share the link over there that we're live and we're talking about this. I would much appreciate that. It saves me from trying to look at two different screens here and post that. So bear with me while I go live and get myself ready to do the show. Thanks again for tuning in.
You are listening to Sean Harrison on Amp Life Talk Radio, a place for amputees and those dealing with limb loss. The views expressed on the show by the host, co-hosts, and guests are their own. Always seek medical advice from a licensed medical professional.
And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Amp Life Talk Radio. Bear with me while I do some adjustments to my screen here to get everything in focus. But I want to say welcome back, everybody. I appreciate all of you tuning back in to another episode of the show. I am so happy to be able to do these shows with you and for you. It is truly amazing, and I look at it as an extreme privilege to be able to come in and talk with you about the things we talk about. Well, Season 2, Episode 23, we are going to be talking about sex and intimacy after amputation. What does that mean? Well, most of you that do know a little bit about me and how I come up with some of the show topics, I have been looking at some of the stuff in some of the shows or some of the media sites that I'm in, some of the amputee support group sites that I'm in, and this topic came up, and I thought, why not do a show on this topic? I think it is very relevant, and from some of the posts that I read in that conversation, it seems like it's a topic that a lot of people have questions on. So I wanted to make sure that I do a show that is on something that all of you want to hear. And I think you all wanted to hear about this. From what I could see and what I could hear, um, in the emotions behind some of the posts that I was reading on this topic, I thought, why not do a show on this? So I got myself to work and did a little research. So before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to my friend Rich at Soul Effective Productions for our intro and for coming up with some of the good theme music that I use on the show. Hopefully you guys like that kind of stuff. I try to keep this as real as possible. I don't want to be a cookie cutter podcast. And yes, this show is recorded live. I do not go back into a studio and pre-record anything unless we have a interview that I'm doing on the phone with somebody to try and clean that up. But most of the time when you're hearing my voice, this is a live show. We don't do cookie cutter type podcast. Not that anything's wrong with that. I just feel that I like having that real interaction. So when we get to a point to where we're going to have the call-in lines where you can call in, you're going to be able to talk to me in person. Those of you that do know, we do have our official app. Go over to Google Play Store and punch in Amp Life Talk Radio, and you can get the official app for this talk show. Our subject tonight is one that is, I must admit, very interesting. As I mentioned, I have decided to tackle discussing a sensitive issue which impacts everybody in the limb loss community: sex after amputation. My goal is to be honest without being graphic. I am certainly not any type of expert on sex or sexuality. Most of my stuff I looked up, I did my research, I did my homework, and tried to bring a show on this subject that will spark conversation, spark your interest, get you to think, maybe think outside the box, maybe want to make you talk with your partner. So what I did was try to put together a show that will definitely enlighten the topic for all of us. But as sexuality and as sexual active amputees, a male who is in a happy relationship, I know I can speak about my experiences with my partner, Heather. I'm very happy, and my experiences with her are one to where we're very open and honest with our communication with each other on intimacy and sexuality. So she's probably going to cut my head off. She didn't know I was going to throw on her bus like this. But I think as an amputee talking about this, giving you a very real perspective on me and what I do helps. It may hopefully help break the ice on this topic that I think most think about, but very few will address. Very few definitely will address in a talk show atmosphere. It is a very taboo subject, we'll say. As you'll get to see from some of the information that I'm going to put out tonight, you're going to see why. Now, the impact of limb loss on an amputee's ability to be intimate is a very sensitive and personal issue. I like having the ability to do this podcast and this talk show where we can tackle these issues like this. You don't have to go to a counselor. You can listen to this show in the privacy of your own home or in your vehicle. You can gather up your partner and both of you guys can sit down. And I highly suggest that right now, if you are in a relationship, get your partner, grab her in, grab him in, sit down, let's go through this. It is unfortunate that most are left to deal with fears and emotions on their own, which probably makes for a very difficult, tough time to adjust to what we're talking about, sex and intimacy. Now, most amputees feel they are ugly or their partners will not find them attractive anymore after an amputation. They are eager to be seen in a certain way or in this new way since their amputation. Psychological challenges will follow your amputation or follow limb loss, and they are strongly associated with the levels of sexual dysfunction. Like any upheaval or hurdle that hits a couple in their life's relationship, amputation, whether the result of a trauma or an illness, can affect a couple's intimacy. In addition to the physical stresses placed on the body by the actual accident or illness, amputees may also experience stress related to body self-image and body, we'll say, self-esteem. Two of the main factors that will play into this is body self-image and self-esteem. Physical pain set aside, insecurities over physical appearance, desirability, and sexual performance may infiltrate your bedroom and threaten the intimate relationship between you as a couple. We're going to talk tonight about some of that and hopefully shed some light on how we can overcome that. So as we move into segment one of the show, let me get this out there first. I'd like to send a big thank you to one of our sponsors. In fact, I'm going to start calling my sponsors my partners because we work with everybody. So this segment of the show is going to be brought to you by Soul Effective Productions. My man, Rich, definitely knows how to make you sound and look good. So look him up on Facebook, Soul Effective Productions. If you need sound, video, or anything like that, professional production work, he's the guy that I use and I go to help me with my show. Segment one of the show, we're going to be talking about body image and self-esteem. We've touched on this subject before in the show, and most of you probably didn't realize how important this was on a topic that we're going to be talking about. Body image and self-esteem when it comes to sexual activity and our intimacy with our partner. Often self-perceived as a mutation or mutilation. Amputation may negatively impact a person's body image, which in turn affects his or her self-esteem. Depression over visual deformity, the inability to perform daily routines that were once simple tasks, and dependency upon others contribute to feelings of loss of control, loss of lifestyle, and loss of self. We've talked about all this in previous shows. That's why I put a survey out there about viewing yourself in the mirror. This all plays into this body image and self-esteem, and definitely is going to play into how we view ourselves sexually. Men tend to equate the loss of a limb with the loss of manhood. For sexually active women who want to continue to seduce and have a man's attention, the impact of body image can be especially devastating. To what extent the amputee's body's image and self-esteem play a role in a couple's intimacy or intimate life depends upon factors such as the level of acceptance of the situation, whether the amputee is a male or a female, and also age. These feelings about self can begin even before the amputation. So let's say that you have a pending amputation coming. These things can start to take hold and sink in even before the amputation because we're worried about the outcome. What will happen? How will my husband, my spouse, my partner, how will they see me? So these things can actually take hold or start to affect us in our relationship, our intimacy, our sexual life before the amputation even happens. For those who are in a situation where they had time before an amputation, unlike trauma amputees who wake up to this new situation, intimacy and sex in those situations can be very devastating. I saw this quote and I wanted to read it to you. Love is the answer, isn't it? But sex raises a lot more very interesting questions. And that was by Liam Neeson in a movie called Kinsey. And I thought that was very interesting, depending, for the topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. Every person who has a physical disability will experience, to some extent, physical restrictions. Combined with a negative body image and a lower self-esteem, intimacy levels in relationships are ultimately affected by this. It's important to address issues surrounding the amputee's sexuality. The lack of information on this topic leads me to conclude that society has a difficult time linking human sexuality to disability. When a person becomes an amputee, their sex life just doesn't simply end. We're human, for God's sake. Humans are sexual species by nature. Whether we are consciously aware of it or not, our primary instinct tends to be sexually driven. It begins at birth. We have a need to touch and to be touched. At some level, we all have a need for approval and acceptance. And as humans, however, we crave this deeply. It's deeply buried inside of us. And we have this need for intimacy. The amputee may experience a wide range of emotions and anxieties over his or her sexuality post-amputation, after the amputation. Now, for men, anxiety over sexual performance is probably one of the major concerns. Women may feel they are less attractive visually. Keep in mind, medications can also affect your libido. What that means is it can affect, for men, it can affect erections. It can affect your ability to rise to the occasion, we'll say, performance-wise. For women, it can also affect a female from a whole different standpoint. Dryness, lower libido. These things need to be taken into consideration when you are coming out of your surgery, not to mention the pain. So heavily medicated patients may experience this decreased sexual desire after the amputation. A slower body function, the inability to achieve or maintain the erections for men, and the failure to achieve orgasm That could be for women or men. Adaptive changes to sexual positions may also be necessary to facilitate physical comforts. With us talking about post-amputation, if you are not completely healed at this point, that could be a very big issue. Pain, discomfort. All these things can play a role in our sexual level, our intimacy level. Now, partners to amputees may also experience difficulties of acceptance when it comes to a lagging sex life. We have to be very understanding. Understanding, adaptation, and acceptance are keys to gaining the confidence in the bedroom that your partner will need post-amputation. After all, it's more than just sex. It's sharing intimacy and emotion. Beyond just physical pleasure, sex is also all about exchanging and bonding. Emotionally supporting the amputee, your spouse, the person who has had the amputation, is very important. Emotionally supporting that person and giving them sexual space by demonstrating less demand is very important. Adaptation or adapting becomes a necessary component to be successful in all facets of the amputee's life when it comes to intimacy and sex. When it comes to emotional, social, and physical connections, there are no easy hurdles when it comes to this, but communication is key. For men, the desire for sex is still there, depending upon whether or not the amputation is upper or lower. For those with upper extremity amputations, it is sometimes worse. Why, you ask? Not only are they affected visually by the missing limb, but they also have difficulties with the physicality of it. For many, because a large part of sex involves touching, they experience difficulties when trying to satisfy their partner, when they only have one arm, for example. It becomes a challenge. Balance, touch, everything. Male wheelchair users tend to feel less of a man if they are able to stand, if they are unable to stand during the act of intercourse. They tend to have a better self-image if they can stand. Not standing affects that. For women, age comes into play. Older women in their 70s and 80s tend to care less. Many want anatomy or autonomy at that age. They want to be more bonded. It's a deeper connection for them, and acceptance comes more easily for them. In sex, there are no hard and fast rules. Performances are individual as people are. As we move into section or segment 2 of the show, let's take a quick break and thank one of our sponsors for being a part of this show right after this quick little break.
Sean Harrison.
Segment 2 of the show. Well, we want to thank our good sponsor and my company, Synergy Prosthetics, with offices located in Sacramento, the Bay Area, for those of you that are here in California, and all of Central Valley, which is my territory. And I love the Central Valley. Welcome, guys. So if you are looking for a awesome place to get your prosthetic done, check us out, Synergy Prosthetics at synergyprosthetics.com. So check us out. We're on Facebook too. The proper term, I think, is synergypo.com. I'm kind of just throwing that .com out there. Now, segment 2 of the show, so we don't get off track. Sexuality. Sexuality. I want to say it again. What do you think that means? What do you think as an amputee? How do you feel when you hear that word? Sexuality. What is it all about? Well, nowadays, the topic of sexuality seems to be omnipresent in our modern society. Sex is everywhere. Never were there more TV shows, magazines, movies, websites, everything addressing different aspects of the issue. Sex in the city, sex here, sex there, everything is sex. Remarkably, the omnipresence of this sexuality suddenly disappears when it's concerning sexuality in the case of chronic disease or disability, amputations. People with these tend to not be put in this realm of sexuality. That tends to disappear when you think of it from that standpoint. People with chronic illnesses or disease, disabilities, amputation, this may be caused by the idea that people with a disability, an amputation, or a chronic disease are not sexual beings. Well, who the H came up with that, man? I mean, are we getting the short end of the stick or what? So because I lose my limb, I lose my sexuality? Is that how you feel out there, Amp Nation? I don't think so. I think just because you lose your limb doesn't mean you lose your feng shui, we're going to say. So where does that come from? But that's how society is geared to think when they see us. They see amputees. They see people affected by chronic disease or disabilities or amputations. We tend to get the short end of the stick, and I don't think that's right. So it's up to us to kind of educate people on how we feel. So that's why I'm doing this show, because those of you that are amputees, yes, of course I do this show for you, but for those of you that are not amputees, you could be the spouse of an amputee. I want you to hear this show. We are sexual beings too. Just because something has happened to us does not mean that we do not long for intimacy. The fact that such an idea even exists is utterly regrettable. Since sexuality is a basic right for all humans and a very important part of a full and healthy life for many, also, sexuality often contributes to a person's quality of life. We hear that a lot with amputees, quality of life, but everybody tends to relate that to prosthetics. Your quality of life, or you're going to get your quality of life back. Well, our quality of life includes a lot more than just getting up and walking and ambulating and using that prosthetic. We want to be that sexual Tyrannosaurus in the bedroom too. We don't want to be left out of that. But how? Because so many of us are affected by our amputations. So tonight we're going to talk about how to get that back, how we can deal with some of those emotions. Now, this is no different from people with a chronic disease, cancer, diabetes, whatever you want to call it, or an amputation, which most people consider that a disability. The taboo on sexuality in combination with a person with a chronic disease or an amputation is not only found in our society in general. This topic has also long been ignored by the research community. and we'll say the clinical practice end of it, doctors, rehab people, even though sexual dysfunction is highly comorbid with many treatments of disease and disabilities, fortunately, this situation is changing a little. I was able to find some information on studies that are being performed and that have been performed on this very topic. There is not a lot out there. The pools of amputees that they take these studies on are very small, very, very small. I think the biggest one I saw was 3,300 people in, I think it was either the Netherlands or Switzerland or someplace like that. That's a very small pool of people to do this research with. When there's so many of us, what, 1.8 million amputees, according to Amputee Coalition of America. So a lot of us out there. So this subject definitely needs to be studied a lot more so that we can help ourselves and other amputees deal with this. The topic of sexuality and those with disabilities is gradually receiving more and more attention in research and clinical practices. The development of rehabilitation medicine and improvements in medicine and prosthetics in general have allowed individuals to survive and live much longer than expected, thereby increasing the population living with a chronic disease or disability. The growing number of people living with disabilities, together with an increasing life expectancy in general, means that healthcare providers need to change their focus from survival to improving quality of life, with sexuality being a very important part of that quality of life. Intimacy in romantic relationships can be a struggle for anyone, whether or not the person is an amputee. But being an amputee can throw some additional issues into the mix. Some of the studies show that mature women with spouses 40 to 50 years of age that have good relationships with good communication, which is very key, are just as happy to be alive. They know that they are loved regardless of the amputation. Do you find this to be true in your situation? This is what studies show. Is it true in your situation? Do you find that this is a valid statement? I would love to hear from you in the comments and feedbacks after the show. So please post those into the video category. There's some of you already over here. Hello, whoever you are. It's too far away for me to see. I want to hear back on that because that was a study that showed that. And I want to hear from you if that's a true assessment, as a good statement. Now, for some of the younger women, sex may become less important as they immerse themselves in their careers or professions. However, some women that have lower limb amputations are very affected. And you wonder why. I was talking to some people at one of my facilities today, two girls who wanted to know the answer to this question. So do you know why younger women are affected more traumatically by a lower limb amputation than men? Anybody? Of course, it's the most obvious answer out there. As their legs compromise a large part of a woman's sexuality, legs or an amputation of the lower limb is very devastating. It all depends on how she defines herself. Does she define herself as a mother, a career woman, or a wife? That's why it is such an important factor, an important issue. It's such an important issue to talk about and discuss, to put out there. Please share this show with someone when you see this topic come up in your forums or your chat rooms. Now, I want to go through some questions for you, the listener, to help me with this subject. By answering some or all of these questions, may help with understanding your feelings about this topic. Are you ready? Please feel free to post your questions in this video chat or later on in the community section of Amp Life Talk Radio on Facebook. So, some questions for you, my listeners, Amp Nation. Question number one: what are your feelings on body image and dealing with the perception of others? Question two: how has being an amputee affected your dating life? Question number three: what about the concept of intimacy as an amputee? And question number four: one very basic and sometimes embarrassing question I have heard asked is, do you leave it on or off? Of course, they are talking about your prosthetic during sex. Question number 6, I think we're on. What makes you feel attractive or sexy? And this is for men and women. And our last question: do you have any personal stories that would help other amputees deal with this subject? I look forward to your responses. I will post these up on Facebook under this video and later on up online in the posts. I want to hear from you because I think the answer to those questions can help all of us. It can very well help you just by answering that question. Before we get into segment 3, let's take a quick break so I can wet my whistle and I can keep talking about this hot topic. We'll be right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thank you for letting me take that quick break to get some water. And I snuck a couple sips of coffee in there. Keep my juices flowing. We want to thank one of our partner sponsors for this segment of the show, segment 3. I want to give a big shout out and thank you, Valley Wound Healing Center in Modesto. If you have issues with wounds or cuts or abrasions or healing issues, things that you need to go get taken care of, they are an awesome place to go to. Most of the doctors out here use them for helping patients recover from surgeries, ulcers on their feet, different things like that. They are pretty awesome. And they're going to be at our event that I'll talk to you about at the end of this show. Segment 3 of the show, let's talk about sex. What does that mean? Well, every person who has a physical disability will experience, to some extent, physical restrictions. Combined with a negative body image and lower self-esteem, intimacy levels in relationships are ultimately affected. It's important to address issues surrounding amputee sexuality. The lack of information on this topic leads to the conclusion that society is not ready to have this talk, ready to talk about this type of thing. For some reason, prosthetics and sex toys are not an unlikely combination. They don't put those together for some weird reason. When a person becomes physically challenged, does his sex life end? Does sex stop? Does the desire to have sex and intimacy stop? I beg to differ, my friends. It carries on. We are sexual beings. We are very conscious and aware of that feeling deep inside of us. It has been placed there. Amputees and their partners may feel embarrassed about discussing sexual concerns in the beginning, but there is no embarrassment needed to be had about that. I don't understand why it's so hard. Like I said in the beginning, communication is going to be key to get you through this situation. You and your partner must be open and honest with each other and able to conquer these fears of having feelings of my partner doesn't think I'm pretty enough or sexual enough. Talk to your partner. The needs may prevent you from opening up. The fears of this need. You need intimacy. You need this, but you don't know how to ask that question because you're not the same person anymore. Or does your partner really see you as the same person? You might be very surprised if you just talk to each other. Communication will be very key when we're talking about this subject. Let's talk about sex. Communication. Sometimes partners of amputees are afraid or hurting because the residual limb is still new after surgery. This is a very, very common thing. It could be that it's hurting the residual limb during the actual sexual interaction. Communication. Talk about it. Maybe that position doesn't work for you. Maybe you need something different. One of the biggest things that we see in this realm, healthcare professionals can give information to a spouse to help them through this tough spot. A physiotherapist or a health practitioner might come in handy. Nurses also need to be able to discuss couples' concerns in this area. Doctors should find themselves being more up to speed and educated in this topic, in this arena. But one thing that comes to mind that I can say to you when it comes down to let's talk about sex with your partner. Keeping an open mind can help any couple through these challenges of transition. The use of sexual aids such as vibrators, erotic literature, and even fantasizing might help couples reintegrate sexual activity into their lives. The use of sexual paraphernalia, once considered only for the sexually adventurous, may be used by couples who are dealing with amputation. These practical tools come in handy to helping you break the ice in your relationship and in your situation. Remember, keeping an open mind goes a long way when we're dealing with this topic. Sexual positions. That is probably one of the biggest ones that every person in this situation, amputee, spouses of amputees, couples, sexual positions are probably very scary. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to think about it. Well, you're not going to get there if you don't talk about it. Now, it could be that things that once were comfortable for you before your amputation may need you to adapt a little bit after your amputation. Leg amputations make standing positions challenging, especially if you're talking about one leg or possibly a bilateral situation. Side laying positions might be more comfortable, where removal of the prosthesis eliminates an uncomfortable pressure point created from inadvertently twisting inside the socket. Ordinarily, pillows may also be used to support platforms to facilitate sexual activity between partners. Be creative, y'all. Be creative. Although sex may need to be put on the back burner immediately after surgery, unless you got that fire in your soul and you just can't get enough of each other, I would say give it a little time right after surgery. But hey, some people, if you just can't get enough of him or her, I understand. It can be a slow process to integrate back into what you would consider a congealed relationship, situation, intimacy, as pain can be a big part of that. The swelling and the general just physical discomfort will be an issue, but it will subside. It will go away. In-depth discussion beforehand about fears and anxieties about intimacy and sexual positions or sex in itself may help to relax both you and your partner. Placing emphasis on non-sexual contact, such as massages and non-sexual caressing, may help to relieve performance issues or the pressure of feeling you have to perform, especially us men who feel we have to go in there and, be the king of the jungle. You don't have to. So do other things. The absence expectation of sexual success. What does that mean? Well, very simply put, orgasms may happen, they may not happen. In any relationship, these kind of pave the way to a trusting and more comfortable atmosphere. Being able to do that with your partner, yes, it's a great thing, but it's going to take time in that relationship, paving the way to where you both feel comfortable enough. The atmosphere needs to be right, which could ultimately, lead to a better experience, a conducive, good sexual experience, intimacy outcome. And this is no matter what the physical limitations are, being able to be placed in an environment that relaxes both of you may help aid in the sexual success that we just talked about. Setting the mood. Now, setting the mood is also probably one of the most important parts of being sexual and intimate after an amputation, especially after years of being in a committed relationship. It is easy for some couples to come to this or find this place of a very good environment, a very good mood. It can be probably a lot easier the longer that relationship has been in place. If this is a new relationship, it might take a little bit longer, but you can do it. It can happen. That's something to think about. Setting the mood, getting things ready. Candles. We can do a hot tub full of bubbles. All those different things can help. These are things that can help relax you, get your mind off of what is actually the elephant in the room, we'll say, and help you think about each other. These are all important for you to do. To forego sex altogether, probably not the best thing to do, but talking to each other will help you both find a middle ground and be able to come to terms with a schedule of when and where and how often. It might help to view reconnecting as an opportunity to rediscover passion for each other. In sex, there are no hard and fast rules. Preferences are as individualized as the people are. Some like their bagels toasted, some don't. So, in what position does this leave me? For now, in flats, in no position at all. These are all things you have to think about when you are living with an amputation. And what that conversation is all about is the type of shoes we have to wear. Remember, women find that leg seduction is a big thing for them. Wearing flat shoes is not so attractive. So all these different things are things that we need to consider when we're talking about intimacy and sex being attractive to the other person in our lives. There is something I do want to get into talking to you about as we get close to segment 4 of the show. Now, in order to better understand the impact of limb amputation on sexuality, a distinction must be made between sexual functioning and sexual well-being. Do you know the difference? Do you know what that's all about? I read about this in a research paper, and I took a different twist on it. I like what it was talking about, and I think you'll really get something from it, from the way we are going to apply this into the show. The difference between sexual functioning and sexual well-being needs to be made. And I think it will help you if you are struggling with this topic and issue. Sexual functioning, I will refer to as the general accepted normal performance standards within sexual responses and sexual well-being or sex. Now, sexual well-being refers to the person's subjective individual experiences of sexuality, how it is experienced in the context of his or her personal life and relationship situation. Hopefully that made a little sense to you, and I think it will make more sense as we get into this. So in order for you to really delve into this, let's look at the difference between sexual functioning and sexual well-being. Sexual functioning, as we mentioned, refers to a general accepted norm. The concept includes unlimited functionings in terms of sexual desire. What does that mean? Psychologically, to reflect, we'll say sexual desire, sexual arousal. These are all things that are going to deal with sexual functioning. For the female, we're going to be talking about dryness or wetness, significant muscle relaxations for the male to be able to do his thing pain-free during intercourse. Orgasms for women. This involves a lot of muscle contractions of the lower region. We need to be able to know that this sexual functioning that we're referring to deals with all of these mechanics when it comes to intimacy and sexual intercourse. For the man, it can involve experiencing his height of orgasm, erections, those types of things. Remember, we're talking about sexual function, the general norms. What is normal for you? Let's say before the amputation, you all had a normal situation during sex. You experienced certain things that were normal. Now, after the amputation, how are these sexual functioning norms affected? I think you kind of get what I'm getting at. And then when we talk about sexual well-being, now this, on the other hand, refers to a person's subjective individual experience of sexuality and how it is elevated in the context of his or her personal life and relationship situation. Sexual well-being can have disturbances in the sexual well-being, are also known as sexual problems or concerns. These are different than sexual functioning. Sexual well-being is going to be more of your psyche, your mental, how that affects you. Keep in mind, we're talking about people with amputations and why this is so important. To sexual dysfunctions and sexual problems in this arena under sexual well-being may occur, but they may occur independently of each other. For example, a patient may have a sexual dysfunction without bothering or distressed or distressed by it, but they may also be bothered by a sexual problem without having an apparent problem in sexual functioning. Hopefully that made sense to you. The sexual phenomenon in which biological and physiological factors interact. So both people, their physical conditions and psychological well-being represent independent cornerstones, or in very important cornerstones of sexual health. These things here, sexuality, sexual well-being, sexual functioning, these are all factors that are going to be the cornerstones of a healthy sexual relationship for people who are dealing with amputations. So to break that down into, that was all the jargon I had to read to kind of get this understood. It was confusing to me, so I'm quite sure you're a little bit confused. So I wrote this down to try and help this be more put into amputee layman's terms. Physical conditions directly affects sexual functioning and sexual well-being. Psychological well-being directly affects our relationship. So that's the difference when we talk about sexual functioning and sexual well-being. A physical condition that will directly affect one of those two. From a psychological standpoint, sexual well-being is going to affect more of your psychological. Remember, it's your individual experience. So from a physical standpoint, the sexual functioning part plays a role more with how we perform in the bedroom rather than how our psyche is in the bedroom. Hopefully that made a little sense to you. That was probably the hardest part to break down of this long research paper I had to read to get this done. Let's finish up the show with segment 4. Now that we're kind of done with all that technical talk, I'm going to jump into segment 4, which is going to deal with something to where I think we're all going to find it very, very interesting and hopefully helpful. We'll be right back. And we're back for our final segment of the show. This segment of the show is brought to you by Dr. Brayton of OrthoMed Center here in Modesto, California, a awesome orthopedic surgeon. And I like the guy a lot. He works with a lot of my patients. I work with a lot of his patients. If you need a good second opinion, I suggest you contact Dr. Brayton, OrthoMed Center here in Modesto, California. So segment 4 deals with amputee sexual dysfunction. Another tough topic to talk about with a lot of interesting scientific facts, but I think this one's going to go a little bit better than the other. Now, keep in mind, I do show notes over on amplife.com or amplifetalkradio.com. So some of this stuff I'm reading, if you need to get a second gander at it, you can go over there and actually read it, and it'll probably make a little bit more sense to you just reading through the stuff. I really want you to really understand that last topic we talked about, because it does make a lot of sense when you think about sexual functioning versus sexual well-being. One affects your physical conditions. The other is more of a psychological well-being that will directly affect how you deal with your relationships. So understand the difference between that. And keep in mind, I'm trying to keep the show PG-13, so I can only say so much on here. So I think that's probably one of the things too. So as we get into section 4, amputee sexual dysfunction, there's a thing called the LEAP, a lower extremity assessment project. Now, this study was done with some veterans that returned home from Iraq and Afghanistan. So I want to make sure you understand the premises of the study. But it dealt with amputees. Okay. What they found and published in a paper or research was personal perceptions such as self-sufficiency, body image, all those different things, how positively or adversely they can affect the outcomes of people who have suffered amputations. And when we start talking about relationships and intimacy and sex, how those things affected them. It is a very good study that was put together, and I pulled some of the stuff from that to talk to you about tonight. This study was performed with some of, like I said, our military personnel returning home from the war. Among the influences that they found, sexual and sexual reproductive processes with people that have suffered some of the limb losses that were our active military people returning home, how they responded to things. Now, beyond what appears to be a normal risk of body image influence and sexual dysfunctioning, a person who sustains an amputation is likely to experience a compound effect due to the effect of the amputation, especially on body image, on his or her experience as a whole person. This is one of the biggest things they found with this project that they did. Now, the literature that they had suggests that 20% of the people that they did this with amputations experienced some sexual dysfunction. Over 40% of the people with the amputation experienced a change in their sexual life compared to before their amputation. Now, that's a pretty big number for the people that they did this study on. And that was pretty amazing to hear that big of a number experience that. And from what I can see in some of the chat rooms and social media sites that I go to, a lot of you are affected by that. Some of you put up that you're not really affected by it. It hasn't changed anything. But I think if we were to be honest, and that's what I would like, is the honesty of people. It had to affect you at some point in time during your amputation. I know for me, it did affect me. And I had performance doubts and issues and wondered how I would be seen and how I would do things. And it definitely affects you. I mean, if I was to be very, very honest about my experience as an amputee, um, I mean, back then, yes, I was single, but still, one of the biggest fears I had was performance and how do people see me and how will girls or women see me? I mean, how's the female anatomy going to look at a dude that's got 1 foot? So it does affect you. One of the things they talked about was female amputees reported a heightened sense of anxiety and avoidance of intimacy after their amputations. Now, for you out there, do you find this to be true? Is it tougher for females when it comes to this subject, sex and intimacy after your amputation? Do you find that you are more affected by this? And why are you more affected? We got into it a little bit, but what goes on that's different for the females than for the males? I'd like to hear from you. I like to pick your brain so that when we do a part 2 on this show, I have some stuff that I can actually use and put into the show. Now, keep in mind, amputees report little to no discussion about sex from their healthcare providers. Now, this is something that I read in pretty much every piece of literature or research that I read on this topic. Doctors and rehabilitation teams are not equipped to help amputees or amputated people with this issue, sex and intimacy. It's not taught. It's not talked about in skilled nursing facilities or rehab facilities. They show you how to get in the tub, get out of the tub, get on the toilet, get in your car. Nobody talks about getting busy, and nobody talks about how you're going to do things in the bedroom. I think that should be applied and should be addressed as part of your rehabilitation. It's a very personal subject, but I think it will help a lot of people be more prepared to deal with this once they go home. The spouse should be included in that. And I think it will answer a lot of questions and help with a lot of different things rather than sending you home and, hey, good luck, figure this out on your own, guys. So they are the professionals. They should be helping you address and deal with some of these issues. Instead, you're listening to me. So, which I hope you are getting something from this, but please keep in mind, this was a study performed with our military and some of the veterans who returned home from Iraq and Afghanistan. And I took a few bits and pieces from it to apply to this show and talk about some of the sexual problems and sexual dysfunctions that do occur in people with limb loss. But these problems are not discussed during the rehabilitation process, which I find to be an injustice to the amputee community. It's a huge disservice. So keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. That's one of the biggest flaws I saw in all the research and studies that I saw out there. So an amputee may need to, one, I think the biggest thing as we get towards the end of the show here, an amputee may need time to heal, whether it's a guy or a girl, time to heal the emotional and physical wounds relating to the amputation before they even think about getting ready to have sex. I think that's going to be the biggest thing for you as a partner who is not the amputee or you as the amputee. We need to keep in mind that's probably going to be your biggest thing to do, is taking that time to physically heal from the emotional and physical wounds that we will go through after the amputation. Now, once they are ready, the amputee and their partner are going to have to communicate. I've been saying that all show long. You're really going to have to communicate, and you're going to have to communicate really well in order to figure out what is going to work and what won't. Amputees sometimes carry a deep sense of loss, so figuring out how to have sex again might be emotionally frustrating. It might be an emotional topic. We need to have those We need to be able to have those conversations and communicate with each other. It's going to be very, very important. Sorry about that, but I had something in my throat there, people. Um, they also may find themselves struggling with their own new body appearance and image. So while we talked about looking in the mirror, this is going to be something that may take a little time. So as a partner and a spouse of a new amputee, keep these things in mind as you want to get back to intimacy and sex in your relationship. Patience and understanding on the part of the partner is going to be a big absolute must. Certain positions, all those things may need to be altered just a little bit. Finding something that is going to be comfortable for both of you. Being creative, thinking outside the box is a must. I think that's going to be one of the most important things for you to do. Keep in mind, physical therapy will help strengthen your core muscles and certain parts of your body, but feeling a little weak during certain aspects of sexual activity may be normal. You were probably down and out for a while, so it may take you a while to get back to certain things. People often are very curious about how we as amputees have sex or continue with our sex lives. This is a very common thing. Don't be upset by questions or things that you hear or topics. It's something that our society has not come to grips with. So I would much rather we look at it as being a good ambassador to educate people rather than to get upset with people. Hopefully, we all can learn something, and I will keep talking about topics like this to try and help put some information out there. All I can say on that is that I have learned that a foot is not necessary for intercourse or having a very full sexual life with your partner. Having a foot sometimes works to not having a foot sometimes works to your advantage. I'm just going to put that out there, lay it on the table. An active and adventurous sex life after an amputation is possible, but for every position, it may not be feasible depending on you and your situation. I would ask that you keep an open dialogue with your partner. I think that is very paramount in sex and intimacy as an amputee. You really won't know until you try it. That's the next thing I want to say to you. So get out there, communicate with each other, talk with each other, and go see what works and what doesn't work. I have learned that laughter can be the best thing, and it can go a long way to ease the tension in these situations where we are trying to regain our intimacy and our sexiness back with our partner. Don't take things so serious. It sometimes I find that me and Heather, we laugh a lot about me joking about my foot and being in certain situations as we are intimate with each other. And it does make things a lot easier for us. So have a little laughter, get that fun back into, because before we would laugh at certain things when we were together. Why not now? Patience, love, and open communication are the tools we need to rebuild our sex life after amputation. My friends, I hope that this show helped a little bit, and I hope that it shed a little light on this very tough topic to talk about. I would like to thank all of you for joining me for another episode of Amp Life Talk Radio. I hope you found this information useful, maybe not for yourself, maybe for someone else. Please share it, please pass it along, and tell everybody about the show. Download the app at Google Play, Amp Life Talk Radio, where you will never miss an episode. Be sure to check out the podcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio. If you want to listen live, you just go right over to Spreaker and you can listen to us live all day long. I welcome everybody to join us for the next episode of Amp Life Talk Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. I'm always here. I also do a live show on Facebook where you can see this grill talking to you and see me choke on myself and have to drink some coffee or water. I do appreciate all the follows. Please leave me comments or questions. Give me ratings on Facebook. I really do appreciate those. And if you can drop a rating or a comment, man, I am so appreciative of all the things that you guys have done for me so far. I like to keep my views up there, so keep passing the show around, sharing the show. Remember, share the show and win some stuff. We got some cool things coming up, and I'm going to be trying to get some shirts and coffee mugs to pass out to you guys for sharing the show. So I keep a little list of who's sharing and who's not. I'm like Santa Claus. So if you want to see me on Facebook, for those of you out there in podcast land, Facebook, very easy, Sean R. Harrison or Amp Life Talk Radio. You can check us out there. I also have a Twitter handle where you can hit me up. It's the same as my Instagram handle, which is AmpLifeCOM. AmpLifeCOM. I sure would appreciate the comments and feedbacks on Facebook. Please share us. Please spread the word. Go to the site, amplifetalkradio.com, to check us out and to learn more about some of our co-sponsors who are going to be coming up here pretty soon with some interviews. And we got some other cool stuff coming up. I got so many people interested in the show. We're going to be possibly having Amputee Coalition of America on here. Some of their people are going to be on the show. Some of the projects that I'm involved with. Hey, go over and check out Operation Enduring Warrior. Help those guys out. I'm going to be doing some stuff with them. West Point Spartan coming up August 25th. I'm going to be out there doing that. I'll probably do a live show from there. Hang in there, guys. Sponsor, help me, spread the word. I appreciate everything that you guys do. And I'm so thankful to have such a wonderful following of people. And I've met so many of you out there that are wonderful, amazing people. I'm so appreciative. Hey, if you are around and you're in town and you live out in the California area, especially Northern California, I have a race coming up this weekend in Monterey, the Monterey Spartan. My race is on Sunday. I think I'm at 8:15 or 8:30 in the morning. I'll be out there on Sunday. So if you want to stop by, check it out, say hi, get a picture together, I'm more than happy to do that with you. Again, check us out. Get us on all your social media. Spread the word about this show. I hear a lot of amazing comments about us and what we're doing. And I'm just so happy that the show is actually touching so many people. And it means a lot to all of you. Thank you all for Facebook. I'll come over there in a little bit and thank some of you. To all of you out there in Radio Land, I would like to thank you once again for listening to Amp Life Talk Radio.
You are listening to Sean Harrison on Amp Life Talk Radio, a place for amputees and those dealing with limb loss. The views expressed on the show by the host, co-hosts, and guests are their own. Always seek medical advice from a licensed medical professional.
All right, Facebook people, thank you. Let me grab that screen and bring it over here, and I can see what you guys are up to over there. You guys being nice over there? Hey, guys, what's going on? You're on this screen now, so I don't have to look across the room. Hey, thanks, everybody, for tuning in, checking out the show. I really appreciate it. Hopefully that was a good topic that everybody kind of liked and related to. I'm going to try and put that up in the amputee support group page, and hopefully all you guys will leave me your comments. Hey, Rich, I see your stuff. I'm going to get in here and respond to everybody and leave some comments. I'm reading some of your guys' stuff right now. Is there a call in? Lauren, soon there will be. There will be There will be a call-in number soon, and I will definitely let you guys know when that happens. So, Lauren, yes, I'm working on that, and you guys will be able to call in here pretty soon. Um, I'm reading all your stuff. Hey, thanks everybody for the comments because it was younger for reaction. Man, some good stuff in here. Hey, Tamara. Uh, it's good to see all you guys responding, and good to see everybody leaving some really good, interesting comments. I want to thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all for tuning in, leaving comments. Keep the comments coming because I'm going to post more stuff into this actual feed as I respond to some of your comments and put some of the information that I'm going to be putting in here. I will get to each and every one of your comments. Hey guys, I can't thank you enough for being a part of the show and tuning in here. Sorry, I was touching my volume. Thank you guys. You guys have a wonderful, blessed night. And if you're in the Monterey area this weekend, I'm going for number 2, man. Monterey Spartan. I'll be out there with Dave, the one-legged Spartan. Dave, aroo! So we're going to be out there doing it up. Come out, take pictures with myself and Dave. And hopefully, if you're an amputee and you want to run with us, let us know. We will definitely welcome you on board. I think our next races that we'll be doing here in California are a San Francisco Stadium run, and we have the Sacramento December and November, and then I'm going to be going to West Point to do the Spartan run out there. Thank the people from Spartan for having me on board and challenging me and getting me involved with their organization. It is an awesome thing to do, especially if you're an amputee and you want to go out there and do something that will it will change you. I will just say that you get through that, you will be a changed person. You will not think that there's nothing in this world that you cannot do. So check it out. I'll get you more details on the West Point run, and I'll post something for Monterey this weekend. My race is on Sunday. So hopefully you guys got that. Everybody have a good night. I'll see you at the next show.